Hey, good morning, Palms Church. So excited to be with you today. Listen, before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit of something that I was walking through. Today is one of my favorite Sundays of the entire year, the Kickoff weekend, where we are stirring hearts. We really want you to get involved. We want you to lock into the Dream Team. I think over 70% of our church is on the Dream Team. Dream Team, make some noise! And we are huge into community. We have our community groups launching, and then giving. This is one of those things that I always say, God doesn't want your money. He wants your heart. And so these are the things today we're really sitting on. We want you to jump on the Dream Team if you're not on the Dream Team. If you're not in a community group, find one today. If you haven't given, start giving, because God will do things that only He can do. It is our job, and my job as your pastor, to stir you and say, listen, we be obedient in these things and God will do all of it. But He has to have the things to do the miracles. And I'm telling you, I know that the economy is tight. I know that inflation is what it is. But we got to continue to be faithful, trusting God by saying, God, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to watch you return it in a way that only you can, because He will do miracles. He will do it. He has done it. He will continue to do it. I just want to encourage you today. But before I go any further, I want you to know that this is, particularly for me, a hard day to not preach. And the reason is, for the last 8 years, today's actually, we launched on September 14th, 2014. So this is our 9-year, if you will, anniversary. And today's the day that I love preaching these messages, these messages, because I know that the power of you being involved in community. I know the power of you being locked into something bigger, and I know how we need it. And I was revved up for this weekend. I was pumped. I couldn't wait. And God spoke to me so clearly and said, this one has to come from somebody else. You know, as I've done this and we've rallied and we've gotten people together, I know now as God's doing new things here at Palms and He's growing us in different ways, this one has to come from the team. And Pastor Brandon Pardekooper, he's over all of our leadership development. You know, he's got a doctorate in strategic leadership. This is what he bleeds and this is what he believes. And as the church has grown, I used to love to give things away that I wasn't good at, but now I'm giving things away that I love to do. And I know that's when God's starting to do even bigger things. And that's a part of the Dream Team, is we're not just going to give you authority or tasks. We want to give you authority. We want to give you the ability to make decisions. Like, you are the reason, you are the engine behind Palms Church. That's why we have so many things we can do. It's because of you. It's because of your faithfulness. Everybody from setup to tear down, kids, worship, online, you name it, everything. It's our Dream Team. But listen, today I want you to get locked in with the team. I want you to get into a group. I want you to commit to God. Say, today I'm going to start giving. And we're going to watch God do what only He can do. But today needs to come from the team. And Pastor BP has got a message for you. It's going to stir your heart. We were in a baseball tournament this weekend. And so I was planning on missing today because I was going to be here. But today, we played 2 games yesterday. We're playing today, hoping we win it all. But today, I'm telling you, get off the bench, get into the game, go from the sidelines to the locker room, be a part of this team, get into a group. God's got something magical for your life, supernatural for your life. And we know He's going to do it. Put your hands together and make some noise for Pastor Brandon Pardekooper.
How we doing? Is everybody ready for Kickoff Sunday? Woo! All right, let me see your jerseys. Everybody excited? Who thinks you're going to win today? Wow, you're not very faithful in your teams. I am coming in today a little disappointed. For those who know, we lost on Thursday by 1 point to the Lions. Any Lions fans in here? Oh yeah, right there. Well done. Well done. I tip my hat to the Lions fans. Great game. But you know what? As a fan, I've been through some challenging seasons as a Chiefs fan. I've been with them ever since the 80s. We've had some good seasons, we've had some bad seasons, and here's the deal. When you're a fan, you're always a fan. And we have Patrick Mahomes, so I think we'll be all right. I'm excited about this morning. I will admit that on Tuesday when Pastor said, hey, I want you to preach this week, there was this initial thought in my head of like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I'm able to do that. But then there was an excitement in me because like he said, this day is where I am. This is my heart. And so for better or worse today, you're going to get my heart. And it's going to be fun because God is doing something in this place. And He has been. We are 9 years in. This church is 9 years old. And God has done amazing things every step of the way, but he is not even close to really getting started. And I think that today is one of those monumental moments. It's a moment where we're going to look back on as a church family. We're going to look back and say things changed on that day. And I don't say that because I'm preaching today. Believe me, that's not why. But I'm saying it because God is moving and he is drawing us closer to him, and he's wanting to do great things in us as a church family, but in you as an individual. And so I'm excited about today because it's going to be pivotal if you allow it to. Have you ever wanted to be a part of something epic? Ever wanted to be that? I know when I was little, I remember we had this really big yard that I would run around in, and you know, my dad was pretty lenient with me, and he just let me have all kinds of weapons and all kinds of things to play with, and so I would run around the yard with my nunchucks and my swords, and I would imagine being a part of these huge epic battles. And I would imagine me running alongside the Incredible Hulk, and we would fight all the bad guys, and we would win every time. Or I would imagine myself being right there alongside Optimus Prime. He was one of my great heroes. He had this really cool voice. And I would fight alongside him, and we would do these great, amazing things. Or it was the great, powerful leader of the Thundercats, Lion-O. Him and I we were boys. Thundercats, like big sword. Yeah, my kids have a Thundercat sword. Man, it makes my heart happy when they have that. And I would imagine these epic moments, these battles that we would have, and we would beat all the bad guys and vanquish evil from the whole world. And I loved it. And as I got older and I started playing more sports and getting more involved in sports, I started to imagine myself being Michael Jordan and making that game-winning shot and winning championships and giving Scottie Pippen a high five and giving Tony Kukoc a big hug and lifting up B.J. Armstrong on my shoulders because, he played at Iowa and I'm from Iowa. And so he was a big hero for us because he was playing right with Michael Jordan. And I would imagine these moments, these fun, challenging, but epic moments. When we got into college, it was the movies. I didn't watch a lot of movies when I was in high school. And so when I got to college, it was like, hey, movies, I'm going to watch all kinds of movies. And I was drawn to these really big, epic movies. Movies like Braveheart and The Matrix or Lord of the Rings or even Harry Potter because they were such grand scale and grand stages and grand battles. The conflicts were so epic. And it always seemed to me that that's what I was drawn to, the battles and the stage. I was drawn to the grandness and the epic feeling of everything that was happening. But what I came to realize as I got more mature, I realized that it wasn't that drew me. What drew me was the epic relationships that were tied to those battles and those conflicts and those moments. It was the people that were doing it together. It's the fellowship that makes Frodo's journey to Mordor what it is. It's his relationship with Samwise that makes it give us all the feels, right? Or it's Hulk and Thor and Iron Man that make Captain America's team the Avengers. If it's just Captain America, that's a great story, it's fun, but we lose interest eventually. It's the relationship. It's why they made 300 movies for the MCU. It's because we're bought into the relationships of all of them together. That's why Endgame was such an epic movie, because we got to see all of them together, even though they all had their individual movies. It's the relationships that draw us. It's the team. Because when we're with the team, there's always someone there to share the victory with. There's someone to pick us up when we're struggling. There's someone to encourage us when we just don't feel like we can keep going. It's the team that draws us. It's the team that we long for. It's those that we share the journey with that really draw us in. And there's a character in the Bible who knew this all too well. And that's the disciple Matthew. Now, I'm going to weave together Matthew 9 and Luke 5 together. So if you try and follow along in your Bibles, this is going to be too hard. So we put it on the screen. I'm going to read it through. But it's this moment that changed Matthew's life. So we're going to start in Matthew 9:9. As Jesus passed on from there, he just healed a paralytic. So Jesus just healed a paralyzed man, and he gets up. And as Jesus passes on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And Matthew made him a great feast in his house. And there was a large company of tax collectors and others reclining at table with them. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Now, Matthew is a very interesting story, especially when you're looking at the disciples as a whole. Matthew is a tax collector for the Romans, and he is collecting taxes from his own people, the Jews. And so, as you can imagine, they are not big fans of Matthew. It's likely that Matthew was very wealthy because most tax collectors would collect the taxes, but then they would also add a little extra, a little something on the top for them. And they would keep that. And tax collectors live very lavish lifestyles by fleecing other people. And so, as you can imagine, the Jews didn't really love Matthew because here was Matthew, a Jew, who the Jews hated the Romans. They hated the fact that the Romans were in their cities, controlling their lives. And here was Matthew making that possible by collecting taxes from his people, taking a little bit more for himself, and then giving it to the Romans. And so Matthew is not a very well-liked individual. And day after day, he goes and he sits in this booth, in this tax collector's booth, and people come to him and pay taxes, and he collects the tax, and when they don't have taxes, he has to hand out punishments, and he turns them over to the Romans, and when they beg and plead with him, he maybe he was gracious, probably not. And so he was this constant thorn in the side of every Jewish person. And so he would sit in his booth, and he would look out the window, and he would watch as people would pass by every day. He would watch as they went about their lives, and as they shared victories, and as they had conversations, and as they struggled through life, and as they went shopping and meeting up with people. Matthew was in the booth, and he was watching. He would watch their lives progress forward. But Matthew would stay in the booth because it was safe. I don't know about you, maybe you're really well liked. But for somebody who understands, maybe not everybody loves you all the time. Like, you understand that if you go into certain crowds and certain places, they're probably not going to like you too much. I imagine that's a lot what Cowboys fans feel like most of the time. But they go anyway. They just show up wherever they want. They just keep coming. But Matthew didn't. He stayed in his booth. And he watched life kind of happen without him. Because it was safe for him. And because it gave him this sense of control. Now, how many of you feel like you have an overabundance control in your life? All right, we're doing pretty good. Now, for somebody who's a little more type A, somebody who likes to create a semblance of control, this is very difficult reality to come to because you know that you just don't. Life is just not controllable. We just don't have a handle on our lives as much as we like to think that we do. And you see, if Matthew were to step out of his booth, there are a lot of questions, a lot of dangers. There's no telling what could happen to Matthew. Maybe he would get mugged. Or maybe he would get caught up in a mob as they were traveling down the street, angry about something. Or maybe he would wander into a group of religious fanatics and somehow either get caught up in that or beaten up by them or who knows what. Or maybe worse than anything else, maybe he would just be ignored. But in his booth, he's safe. In his booth, Nothing's going to happen to him. And so he hides there. You know, I imagine that being Matthew, I imagine that he understood what it meant to be hurt and rejected by his faith community. Again, the Jews probably didn't like him. So he understood what it meant to be rejected. He understood what it meant to be let down and disappointed. And so his booth kept him from all that. It gave him this separation from danger. And so he watched people's lives carry on while his life stood still. And then Jesus showed up. Now, how many of you know when Jesus shows up, when he really shows up, things can really get interesting, right? I would imagine that most of us in here have had this moment with Jesus. We understand that Jesus showing up is a moment to pay attention to, a moment to take interest in, and a moment to be ready to make a decision. Now, it's likely that Matthew saw Jesus before. In fact, it's probably likely that Jesus has passed by several times. It's likely that Jesus and his disciples had spent time outside of the booth having conversations, meeting with people. It's even possible that the disciples came to his tax booth and paid taxes before. So Matthew is familiar with Jesus. In fact, I'm sure he's heard stories of Jesus, and there's a good possibility that the healing of the paralyzed man happened right outside his booth. And so Matthew's not unfamiliar with Jesus. But on this particular day, in this particular moment, something unexpected happened that had never happened before. Instead of walking past Matthew's booth, Jesus looks at him. He stops, he pauses, and he looks at Matthew. He was paying attention to Matthew. And not only that, but he was talking to Matthew. Now imagine Matthew in this moment, seeing Jesus pass by several times before, maybe again watching the paralyzed man get healed and the crowd around him and everything else. And in the midst of all of that, in the safety of his booth, looking through this little window, he sees Jesus looking at him. And not just looking at him, but beginning to talk to him. And telling Matthew, follow me. Jesus isn't asking. Jesus isn't saying, hey, Matthew, if you have time, if you can fit it into your schedule, why don't you come and hang out with us for a little bit? Jesus looks at him and he says, follow me. And this is where the story gets really interesting. In a movie, this moment that Jesus and Matthew are having, it would probably build up. Like it would be this moment where Jesus, he heals the paralyzed man and he stands up, and as he's standing up, the music starts to swell and the feeling of the movie gets really epic feeling. And maybe there's a shot from behind Matthew where you see Jesus like reach out in this dramatic way and say, follow me. And then as Jesus says that, the music dies down and everything goes quiet, this deafening silence. And Matthew is caught in this slow motion moment where he has to consider what he's going to do. Because when the music starts again and Matthew makes a decision, everything is going to change. Either he's going to say yes to Jesus and he's going to leave the booth and he's going to follow him and his whole life is going to be different. Or he's going to choose to stay in the booth, to stay in safety, to stay in comfort and convenience, and he's going to live the rest of his life with this memory of a moment that he passed by and missed out on. Either way, his life is going to be different. Will he step out of the booth and follow Jesus? Or will he remain safe in his booth and watch the opportunity go by? Is he willing to risk being hurt again? Is he willing to risk being let down again? Is he willing to risk being disappointed again? Is he willing to give up the financial situation he's in and live day to day, wondering how he's going to get by? Is he willing to give his time to something that isn't about serving his interests, but for once is about serving the interests of others? Is he willing to step away from the booth and get neck deep in the messiness of relationships? What's Matthew going to do? Today is Kickoff Sunday for the NFL. And right now, about this time, several teams are showing up at their stadiums. They're going to the locker rooms. They're getting their warm-up stuff on. They're going out on the field and they're doing walkthroughs. They're imagining the game. They're having conversations. They're going over plays. They're doing everything that they need to do to get ready for today's game, because today's game is the beginning of their pursuit for a Super Bowl win. Today for us, it's about so much more than just the Lombardi Trophy. Today is about answering the question, what are you going to do? Today is answering the question, are you going to get out of the booth, out of safety, out of convenience, out of comfort? Are you going to get in the game? What are you going to do? What are you going to choose to do? When I was in Bible college, I went to Iowa State for a year. I was going to be a football coach and a history teacher. That was my plan. That was what I thought God was going to do with me. Super excited about that. And then towards the end of my spring semester, God said, no, you're going to go to Bible college. And I knew that I was called into ministry. I knew I was going to be a pastor. I just knew it. Deep in my heart, I had known that. Even before I went to Iowa State, I knew it. I was going to go to Iowa State, get a fallback degree, just in case that whole ministry thing didn't really work out. And God said, no, you're going to go to Bible college. And so I did, not really having clear understanding of what was going to happen with my life. And my Bible college had a long history of incredible missionaries that were all over the world and did amazing, amazing things in all these remote areas of the world. And in class, we would hear stories, or in chapel, we would hear stories of these awesome missionaries, and they would come back and they would preach to us and tell us their stories about all the things that God did in their lives and all the amazing things that he was doing out on the mission field. And it was so inspiring, and it felt these people lived an epic life. And so on our campus, there was all these conversations about missions, and we would celebrate people when they would say, I feel like I'm called to missions, and we would all lose our minds. Or when somebody said, I feel like I'm called to Tanzania, or I feel like I'm called to Vietnam, or I feel like I'm called to South Korea, and we would just celebrate that because, if there is like the top of the callings in ministry, it was missions, right? And so we would even have a chapel every Friday about missionaries and missions and who was called to missions and where were they going. And I wouldn't say that there was a pressure to be a missionary. I didn't feel like they were pushing me to be a missionary, but you definitely got the feeling like missionaries were like better than everybody else. And so for me, it was like, okay, I don't know what I'm called to do, God. I don't know where you're taking me. I don't know what you want me to do. So, God, just tell me. And I remember it was probably the second semester of my first year. And I had been at the altar several times, just crying out to God, God, tell me what you want me to do. Tell me where you want me to go. God, just lead me. And I found myself second semester, and I would have these conversations with God, and it'd go something like this. Lord, I will go wherever you call me, and I will do whatever you do, and I will serve you in whatever way you want me to. But please don't call me to be a missionary in Africa. Please don't do that, God. Because that was the fear in my heart, was that God was going to call me to do something that I honestly absolutely did not want to do at the time. It just wasn't in me. I like being an American. I like watching football on Sundays. I love eating hot dogs and hamburgers. I love our country. Go USA. But what I realized, what God spoke to me in that second semester, he told me he's never going to call me to do something that he doesn't first give me a heart for. And that set me free. Because I didn't feel guilty about not being a missionary. I felt like it was okay to do whatever he called me to do. And I felt like he was calling me to be a youth pastor, and I was terrible at it. But what I learned is that God's not interested in using people. He's interested in growing people. He's interested in investing in people and loving people and developing people and helping them live their best life. That's what God's interested in. God wants to grow his people. When you look at Scripture, you go all the way back to the beginning. It's about growing his people and giving them their best life. Moses' best life wasn't in the palace of Pharaoh. It was in the wilderness with his people. Joseph's best life wasn't with his family starving, but it was in Pharaoh's palace saving Egypt and his family from a famine. Paul's best life wasn't to be a religious leader who was persecuting Christians. It was to be a tent maker sharing the gospel. God is interested in us living our best life. But the trick for us is our best life is found in him and through him. The problem is we're the ones that derail that. We're the ones that insert ourselves into the equation. We're the ones that choose convenience and comfort over calling. We're the ones that choose to stay in the booth. Matthew had to leave his booth, and he had to step into the unknown to discover the epic life that God was calling him to, that Jesus was beckoning him into. That's what Kickoff Sunday is all about. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and they're talking to you and they just stop talking and walk away? Well, that's my conversation with God this week. Again, pastor said, hey, I want you to preach on Sunday. Great. Figured out. Love it, excited, super happy. Until Saturday night when God had spoken to me a little bit, and then somewhere along the way, he just kind of wandered off. And, it's Saturday. I'm, God, hello. I go to the beach, God starts talking a little bit more, and then he just stops again. And, for, some of us, we like to know what we're doing before we do it, right? And so this has been challenging for me because for those who do actually know me well, I don't do well not knowing what in the world's going on. That's just not how I'm built. Which is just a great example of how God is. He's yeah, you just sweat a little bit. And eventually, when God started speaking to me, 25 minutes ago, he was very clear. He simply just said, share your heart with them for a minute. And if you've ever been in a moment where God just kind of downloads, it's a little overwhelming. And it kind of grabs your heart and you just kind of feel overstimulated because God's just downloading it all. I've been in ministry for over 20 years. I have served in several wonderful churches. I have consulted with several wonderful churches. But at the same time, I've seen some really messy situations. I've seen some really bad situations. And the thing is that as I've grown in ministry and as I've pastored and I've been a part of wonderful congregations and, a couple not so wonderful ones, there's always this question of the relationship between the congregation and the church. Because we all know that the church is way more than the building that we collect and gather in, right? The church is you. Those of us who say, yes, I'm a follower of Jesus and I want him to have his way in my life, we are the church. We just find places to come together every week and be apart together. And one of the things that I determined a long time ago in my ministry was that I didn't want to use people to grow the church because people are the church. You are the church. And coming into today, understanding it's Kickoff Sunday and understanding what today is, and like I said at the beginning, it's pivotal for us. We are on the cusp of God doing great things in us. And so it's easy to come in here and get you excited and hype you up and tell you, you need to be involved and you need to do this and you need to do that. That's easy to do. But at the end of the day, you still have to make the decision, am I going to get out of the booth? Am I gonna be involved? Am I gonna be a part? Because I've seen churches use people. And just like Matthew, who was rejected and hurt and disappointed and let down, I've seen people walk through that because pastors and churches and leaders don't take care of them. And so I know for some of you in here, when we talk about joining the dream team, we talk about being faithful in your giving, we talk about being a part of a gathering, there is a part of you that clenches up. Either deep down inside of you emotionally, or for some of us, it's actually a physical manifestation where we just, I don't think I can do that. I've been there, I've done that, I'm good with just coming in and sitting every Sunday. I'm good with sitting in the seats. I'm good with raising my hands and worshiping God. But I don't want to get into the messiness of church. I don't want to get into the messiness of people. I'll say hi, I'll shake hands, I'll smile, but that's about as far as I'm going to go. I know that enough people in here, some of you are there. And so I can talk to you about the dream team. I can talk to you about giving faithfully. I can talk to you about getting a part of a gathering, but that's all going to fall on deaf ears because you've been hurt and you've been let down and you've watched the church either use you or use other people. And there's a part of you that's like, I'm not going to do that. Jesus, I love you, but your people make me real nervous. Right? Let's be honest. But here's the thing. When Jesus stands outside of the booth and he points at Matthew and he says, come follow me, is he doing it for him? Is he doing it for Jesus? Does Jesus need Matthew to come be a part? He doesn't need that. Do the disciples need one more person to join them? Probably not. Jesus calls Matthew out of the booth for Matthew's sake. Because Matthew is stuck in a booth day after day after day in safety and comfort and convenience, and he's not living his best life because he's disconnected with his calling in Jesus. I know churches get it wrong sometimes, and I'm not gonna promise that we're never gonna get it wrong here at Palms. But what I can tell you is that the heart of your pastors are to serve you and grow you and help you come into your best life possible through Jesus. That's our heart. That's what we want for you. And we understand that by joining the dream team, when you step on the dream team, you're all in. You're a part of us, not because we're keeping you out, but because the dream team is just where it's all happening. And when you step in and you say, hey, I'm gonna be on the dream team. I'm gonna join, I'm gonna step in, I'm gonna get to know people. I'm gonna serve others. That's when it all starts to click and make sense. My youth pastor, when I was growing up, I started going to church seriously in high school. And he would tell us all the time, spiritual maturity is when you stop asking what's in it for me and you start saying, what can I do for others? That's when you flip the switch. For some of us, we've been a part of churches where people have sat in their pews for decades and done nothing. And they're bitter, and they're disconnected, and they're dry. And they say all the right things, but you just don't feel Jesus in them. It's because they're doing it for themselves. We don't want that here. Because we know when we look at other people and we say, how can I serve them? How can I give to them? How can I be a part of their life and help them be better? When we do that, we become better. When we pour out, we grow. For some of you, you're not going to give us your money. You don't want to give it to the church because the church isn't always very faithful in what they do with it, right? And so there's a part of you that says, nope, I'm going to go give it to these people, or I'm just going to keep it for myself. Because times are tough, and I can't make it, and I don't know how to make it work. I love you guys. I love this church, and I love me, but I'm just not going to give you my money. And I know that's a touchy subject. I know that's difficult for us. And I'm not telling you what to do. But what I will say is, when you test God and you faithfully give to him, he will be faithful to you. He will show up. Whenever we step out and we say, God, I'm going to step off this ledge and I need you to take care of me because I think this is what you're calling me to do. Whenever we do that, God shows up. But whenever we stay inside the booth, we ask him to move, he waits for us. Some of us just don't like people a whole lot. People are messy, right? People are difficult. People can be annoying. People can push our buttons. And that's uncomfortable. I think, unfortunately, because of what we've gone through with COVID over the last few years, it's almost given us permission to disconnect. It's given us the okay to not be all in. But that's not what God's called us to do. You look through the entire gamut of Scripture. There is one common theme from the very beginning. It says, let us make man in our image, which shows that the Trinity, God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, existed in relationship before you and I were ever even a part of the equation. We come from relationship. We come from community. We come from a God who is calling us to do this together. Some of you have tried to do faith alone. And it's hard. It's really hard to do it because it's frustrating and discouraging. And sometimes God goes silent when you're trying to prepare for a sermon and you just don't know what to do. And you have people that come alongside you and say, hey, you're gonna be great. It'll be okay. Hey, just be faithful. You have people there to pick you up and walk with you, give you a hug, tell you it's all right. I know relationships are messy. Anybody who's married in here knows that. But it's 100% worth it too. It's 100% worth being in relationship with other people. The question is, what are you going to do today? We are trying to make it as easy as possible for you. We have gatherings all over the city, all during the week, throughout the month, for all kinds of groups of people, all kinds of interests. We have a gathering that you can be a part of. I guarantee you there's at least one that you can be a part of. And I get it, we're all busy. We all have things going on. We got kids in sports and work. And some of us have school to do. We just have things going on in our lives. But here's the thing. If you are disconnected from the body of Christ, then you can't be fully connected to Jesus himself. There are gatherings for you to be a part of. Right outside of the info booth, there's a computer set ready for you to just check out what's on there. Or you can just go to palmschurchonline.com and right there on the homepage, just choose the option for our gatherings. It's that simple. Find one, sign up and show up. Some of you in this room have been here for maybe even years and never joined the dream team. And I don't know why, busyness maybe, hurt, whatever the case is. But I want to challenge you. Today's the day to kind of flip that switch. Here's the nice thing. You try out the dream team, you don't like it, you can just step out. People do it all the time. But what I think is when you step onto the dream team and you're a part of a team and you're part of a community and you get to know them and they get to know you and you're walking through life together, it's going to be the deep breath of fresh air that you've been looking for. All you have to do is just sign up real quick right out there, the info booth, or go on our website. Some of you in this room have been on the dream team for a very long time, but you've never taken the step to be a captain. It's time. It's time. Because God is about to break open and do something epic here at Palms, and we want to be in position ready to do that. And I want you to be a part of it. I want you to be in the position that God's called you to be. Because he wants to grow you. Does he want to grow Palms? Probably. Does he want us to reach this community? Probably. But what I know that he wants is he wants you to grow in your relationship with him. And that's what Dream Team and the gathering and giving faithfully, that's what it's all about. It's about growing you into your best life, the life that he's called you to. It's stepping out of the booth. Matthew did it, and his life was forever changed. The question is, are you going to? The commitment that I will make to you, my responsibility here is to grow you, is to provide you opportunities, to provide you a way to grow. I'm not interested in you being a great church volunteer. That's not what I'm interested in. What the Dream Team pipeline is designed for is not to make you great at volunteering. It's not even to make you a great Christian, as wonderful as that may be. It's to help you become a great expression of God's creation in you. That's what it's designed for. It's designed to help you in the troubled areas of your life. It's designed to bring you closer to Jesus. It's designed to help you go deeper in his word. It's designed to help you become everything that you feel like you want to be, everything that you're called to be, and everything that God wants to do in your life. And the commitment that I will make to you is that we are not going to just use you. That's not who we are. That's not what we're about. That's not what the Dream Team is about. That's not what this pastoral staff is about. It's not about using you. It's about opening up opportunities where you can walk your calling out. And that's what I want to encourage you to do today. I I want to encourage you to get out of the booth. Go on your phone and sign up. Go out there and sign up. Be a part. Try God out. Test him. If you say, you know what, I don't think all that's going to work. I don't think getting involved in a gathering, I don't think being on the dream team, I don't think faithful giving, I don't think any of that's going to work. If that's where you are today, I'm going to challenge you. On Kickoff Sunday, try it. Test God. Let's see what God can do. Because the reality is God is already where he wants you to be. He's just waiting for you to catch up. He's already outside the booth saying, come on, let's do this. He's waiting for you to jump in. Is it going to be what you think it's going to be? Maybe not. I guarantee you when Matthew stepped out of that booth, he had no idea what he was getting into. And I guarantee you there were even moments where Matthew was like, whoa, maybe this was a mistake. Whoa, we're sleeping in tents? What? Like I have my nice comfy bed at home. But he didn't give up. He didn't turn back. In fact, there were hundreds that left Jesus eventually. Hundreds. And there were 12 that stuck. The path of giving up is always greater than the path of persevering. There are always more people giving up. If you want to be in the in crowd, you will give up. But if you want to follow Jesus and live an epic life and answer the call, you're going to be a small number. We at Palms, we have the benefit of having 70% of our community on the dream team watching God move in their lives. The challenge when God stops talking to you. Sometimes you don't really know how to land the plane. And this morning, I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on in your heart. I don't know why you are in the room. I don't know why you are where you are. I don't know why you are or are not on the dream team. I don't know why you do and do not give. I do not know why you are or are not a part of a gathering group. I don't know. I have no idea. But God does. And I think what God really wants to do this morning is he just wants to talk to you. You. And I think he wants you to listen to what he's saying. And then he wants you to be obedient to whatever that is. And that's hard to do. I get that. But on the other side of obedience is greatness. And so in a minute, I'm going to pray. And I'm going to invite you to just come here at the altar. And maybe that's a step out of the booth for you. Maybe you've never been to an altar. Maybe you're like, whoa, I don't know what's going to happen at the altar. Nothing weird will happen, I promise. All right? But the step out to the altar could be life-changing. It could be your step out of the booth. And I want to invite you to do that. Even if you just walk up here, say, Jesus, talk to me. And then just listen for what he's going to say. Because I don't think you're here by accident. Do you know the odds of you being here today with this group of people? Do you know what the odds of that are? They're astronomical. And the fact that you're in the room, in this place, you're online watching, the fact that you're here says you are meant to be here. God made sure you were here for today. Don't miss out on that opportunity. I guarantee you, Jesus knew Matthew was in the booth where he was healing the paralytic. Jesus knew that. And when he was done healing the paralytic, he looked up at Matthew and he said, come follow me. You're in the room. You're online. You're a part of this moment. Don't let it pass as if, just coincidence. God doesn't do coincidence. He has a reason and a purpose. And he wants your heart, and he wants to grow you, and he wants to give you the life that he's designed for you. We just have to make sure that we don't stand in the way of that. Everybody stand, please. I'm going to pray. I want you to respond. And I want you to be obedient with whatever God says. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't make sense, just be obedient to him and see what he does. I promise you, he'll do more than you can imagine. Lord Jesus, I thank you so much for today. God, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. I thank you for your word that comes to life. And I thank you, God, that you took a moment with a man in a booth who was standing still in his life. And you called him to something greater. You called him to get neck deep in the messiness of humanity. You called him to be a part of people's lives, to serve others. You called him to leave his booth and to live an epic life. And as much as we love reading stories like this and having moments like this where we can reflect on what you do, God, we want you to move in our lives. We want you to do great things in our lives. We want to live this epic lifestyle. We want to see you provide. We want to see you move. We want to see you change lives through us. And Jesus, I pray that you will, God, that you'll meet us in this moment. God, when we respond to the altar, when we take that step forward, we step out of the booth and come forward. God, I pray that you will speak to us, and may our ears be open and ready to hear. You have called us, every one of us, to do something, to change someone's life, to influence someone. You have called us to make a difference in this world. And we know that it's not going to be easy. We know it's not going to be convenient. But we also know it's the greatest life we could live. And so I pray this morning that as we respond, that you will speak to us, and then that you will give us the courage, and you will give us the confidence, and you will give us the perseverance that we need to follow through and be obedient to you, even if it's not easy. And I pray that in this moment, as we look forward into the life of this church and us as individuals, God, that we will remember today, Kickoff Sunday 2023, we will remember this day as the moment that everything changed, that lives were changed, hearts were changed, a city was changed. May we remember this, because you're a great God, because you do great things and you call us up into it. Lord, we thank you for all you do in our lives. We thank you for everything you've done in our lives. But we thank you for what you're going to do in our lives ahead. In your name, amen.
Yeah, yeah. Oh. We're available to you, God. Yeah. So pour out your spirit on our praise. Come, let revival fill this place. Stir up our faith for greater things. Lord, we ask, we seek, we pray. All this to lift up and proclaim Jesus Christ, the highest name. Send us your power like the flame. Lord, we ask, we seek, we pray. Pour out your spirit on our praise. Come, let revival fill this place. Stir up our faith for greater things. have it all. You can have it all, God. You can have it all. You can have it all. Oh, pour out your spirit on our praise. Come let revival stir up our faith. Lord, we ask, we seek, we pray. All this to lift up and proclaim Jesus Christ, the highest name. Send us your power. Lord, we ask. Lord, we ask, we seek, we pray. 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 Can we give God some praise in this moment?
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any new content or videos, and tell all your friends. Also, we're here live every Sunday. We'll see you soon.